Tonight, we're not talking about blurry photos or shaky videos. We're talking about the people behind the encounters. Hunters, hikers, police officers, everyday men and women who say one moment in the woods changed how they see the world forever. I'm Matt, and this is Deep Woods Paranormal. In tonight's episode, we're talking about Bigfoot witnesses and the people behind the encounters. So tonight we're going to talk about 10 Bigfoot witness talking points. Number 1, who Bigfoot witnesses really are. Number 2, most witnesses don't come forward. Number 3, consistent physical descriptions across reports. Number 4, the moment they realize it's not a bear. Number 5, sounds witnesses never forget. Number 6, close encounters versus distant sightings. Number 7, intelligence and intentional behavior. Number 8, physical evidence found after the encounter. Number 9, how encounters change witnesses. Number 10, why witness testimony may be the strongest evidence out there. All right, so let's get into these guys. Let's talk about this from start to finish. And just so you know, if you don't know already, I've been exploring Bigfoot evidence and researching Bigfoot for, going on 14, 15 years now. I'm a Bigfoot witness myself. I have experienced them both close and far. I've had pretty much every experience on here, and I'll talk about why this pertains to me and how this changed me as well as we go and through the talking points, so you can kind of get a real true encounter, a real feel for what it feels like to really encounter these things and what I went through as a witness. Now, I'm not just witnessed one Bigfoot. I've had probably 40, 50 encounters with them. I'm one of those people who's been in the right place at the right time. I figured out where they are, both at Black Star Canyon out in Santa Ana, California, and in at Joe's Camp out in the Sabine National Forest in Texas here. So anyways, who Bigfoot witnesses really are. Most of them are non-thrill-seeking or internet personalities. Most commonly, they're just hunters, hikers, they're truck drivers, park rangers, law enforcement officers. Many had no prior belief in Bigfoot. When you get a police officer, a park ranger, somebody that is a professional witness that can testify into a court of law what they saw, that's pretty dang good. A lot of these people, they get called. A lot of police officers get called, especially in Bigfoot hotspots. Oregon, Washington, Northern California, sometimes Texas, Louisiana, sometimes Oklahoma, Arkansas, all through the middle of the country, Tennessee, and all these areas, all the way up through, most of the United States and around the world too. I'm sure this pertains to everybody listening who has a Bigfoot-like creature in their area. But these witnesses, they are, the people that are real credible witnesses. There are some people that claim to have seen them, and we find out later that they were just lying or just trying to get attention. But the real people that are actual Bigfoot witnesses, they, like myself, they usually keep it to themselves. They don't want to be ridiculed. They don't want to, have all these different people, around them saying that they faked evidence or they're just crazy or whatever. And that's pretty much talking point number 2. So let's get into this. Why most people don't come forward. Again, fear of being ridiculed, being labeled crazy. And I've heard that so many times out here from so many people that when they find out I'm a Bigfoot researcher, they pull me aside. They don't want to talk about it in public. They don't want it being talked about in public. They don't want their name out there. They don't want any of their information out. They don't want to be on camera. They don't want anything. They don't want fame from it. They don't want to be known. because they're afraid people are going to make fun of them and point fingers at them and push them away and tell them they're crazy and stuff like that. A lot of people like police officers and park rangers and people like that. Basically, they don't like to come forward because it can hurt their career. Imagine a police officer, when you see witness testimony from a police officer, it's usually long after their career's over. They're retired from the police department, or a park ranger. They come forward after they've retired or quit their job or moved on to something else. Mainly because they're afraid they're going to get threatened. Their livelihood's going to get threatened. They're going to lose credibility if it's a police officer. Imagine going in and telling your police chief, sir, you won't believe what we saw. We don't have camera of it, but we saw this big, bear, hairy thing at this location, and we ran from it. Your police chief's going to go, what? What are you talking about? Unless they're a believer. Now, nowadays, I would imagine it's a little bit more laxed, especially where Bigfoot reports are very common in little towns and stuff like that. They probably deal with it a lot more than people know. In the military and in park rangers, I know that if you report, I've been told that if you report something like this, they hush you because they don't want that out there. I know in a Bigfoot training manual I was talking about on a previous podcast, there's a whole section of how to, in a whole chapter about how to avoid the hairy man or whatever they called it. They didn't call it Bigfoot. They call it like hairy man or wild man. And it basically says to avoid the area and report it straight to your superior, right? So essentially they don't want people to know that, especially in these forests, that there is something out there. And imagine when, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when somebody actually proves that these exist, if it's allowed to be proven. At this point, it's not being allowed to be proven. And there's a lot of people that they get discredited, even though they're a real witness and they really did see something, because they don't want people to know that there's big, hairy, giant monsters running around the national forest, right? Also, imagine if it's in a logging area. The logging industry would take a major hit. Or it's in a research area for a specific animal, they'd probably close it down. And there's a lot of reasons that they would stop people from going into these areas. And if it's a national park, they might have to close the national park because people would be too afraid to go in, right? Imagine if they admit Bigfoot's real, what else do they have to admit? Is Dogman real too? Is there skinwalkers? Is that a real thing? And the military knows. I'm not talking about the whole military. The military is very compartmentalized, and the higher up you go in the military, the smaller amount of people there are running things, and essentially that smaller amount of group is very compartmentalized as well. And so they don't talk about anything. They keep it all to themselves. Anything that they're working on, the technology that they have, the things that they're doing, they just keep it quiet. Anyways, so most witnesses don't come forward because of fear or ridicule. Again, they're afraid of being having their career damaged. Well, imagine a police officer or maybe a military officer getting kicked out of the military, kicking out of the police force. They can basically, imagine just being like a truck driver or a witness that sees something crossing the road. I've seen this. Actually, I've actually seen this now. This happened to me a couple years ago. Something running across the road in the middle of the night, in the middle of the woods. Well, what do you tell people? What did you see? I just saw a black silhouette of something, literally one arm forward, one arm back, one leg forward, one arm, leg back, darting across the road. And it crossed the 4-lane highway in about 4 or 5 steps, which is really hard to do. It wasn't that big. It was about 6 foot, maybe 7 foot tall, maybe a little bit bigger, actually. But it crossed the road, didn't have a backpack on, didn't have a gun. I could see clear enough. I couldn't see the hair, but I could see the silhouette. It didn't have any kind of, it didn't look like it had any clothes on. And why would it be going across the road? And as soon as I pulled back over and got out and to look and go down there, something growled at me. So I'm like, okay, that's weird. I didn't have time to keep going. I had to go. I was at work, so I had to keep going. So I had to pull back around and go. But if I had basically gone in and told the president of my company, or started talking about it to people, they'd probably go, well, they know me as the Bigfoot guy at work. So it's not that, it wouldn't be that hard for me. They know that I researched Bigfoot. People would probably say that's cool, whatever. But imagine if I was in a regular, workplace, an office, or, I did something else. I came in and I told people this story. Yeah, this weekend I was driving and through the woods and I had this encounter. Everybody like, okay, yeah, all right, okay. What were you smoking? Stuff like that. It would probably just wouldn't go over well, especially if people didn't know I was researching the paranormal. So, I mean, people just don't want to come forward because, also they don't want to be bothered. A lot of people that have these encounters with Bigfoot, they don't want attention. They don't want to be bothered. They live rural for a reason. They live out in the country for a reason. If they're having an experience at their home, Texas here, I mean, a lot of people have had a lot of Bigfoot stories that they will never tell you unless you really, really, really get to know them and they really like you and they're comfortable with you. And that's why building relationships in this field is so important too. They won't come forward. They will not tell anybody. And if they do, they'll probably only tell a very few people, maybe a handful of people. And a lot of the times I get information from somebody that says they saw something, that basically they say, well, my neighbor saw something. And then every once in a while, I'll get to go talk to that neighbor and introduce myself and tell them what I'm talking to, talk to them about my research, and then little by little they'll open up to me a little bit sometimes. Sometimes they don't want anything to do with it, which, is about a 50-50 chance. All right. So here's also something that's interesting. And Amanda said this the other day, consistent physical descriptions across the reports. If you look at most of the descriptions, you're seeing probably a juvenile. People say, oh, they don't get more than about 10 feet tall. Baloney. They get way bigger than that. I've seen them. But usually what people are seeing is between 6 and 9 feet tall. I'm guessing these are probably the adolescents, maybe young teenagers that are probably still growing, still probably putting on weight and stuff like that. And again, I've talked about them migrating multiple times. So the street crossings, people basically seeing them run across the roads like I did and stuff like that. That could be them migrating to another group, or they're going off on their own, or they're going hunting or whatever. People think there's usually one Bigfoot with each report. There's not. There's usually more than one. They do live in family groups. I know that for a fact. I've experienced it. I've talked to multiple witnesses that have experienced it. Sometimes they live in real large groups. Sometimes they live in smaller groups, 3 or 4 to 5, 6. Usually have a couple young ones and maybe an adult male and an adult female. But usually the adult male is not seen around the females. Usually it's out away. So, anyways, consistent physical descriptions. 6 to 9 feet plus tall, broad shoulders, no visible neck, which I've seen multiple times. Yeah, they don't really have a neck. They've got like muscle that comes up to like where they're just above where their neck would be when attached to the jars. Looks like they can turn their heads just a little bit, but they have to turn their shoulders. It looks like their waist is able to turn almost completely sideways. When they walk, I've seen them do this weird thing where they take a giant step forward and basically they turn the whole upper body. And they look. If you've ever seen the Patterson-Gimlin film, you'll see she turns her whole body. She puts her right arm forward, left arm back, full body turn, front right leg forward, left leg back. Same with the arms, and she basically turns her whole body to turn and look at the Patterson-Gimlin basically that's what it's kind of like. They have long arms, a massive stride, and it says human-like movement. They walk two different ways. I think they actually have three different movements, to be honest with you. I think one, when they're not in a hurry and they're just kind of cruising along, not really, not hunting, maybe they're just cruising around looking for whatever, maybe they're just doing whatever. They have a normal gait. They walk just kind of like us. I think when they're in a hurry, if they're trying to get away and they're not running away, they take that longer gait. They can take that longer gait, or they basically turn their hips, which gives them the ability to make an extra 2 or 3 foot stride, I believe. And then when they run, I believe that they do the same thing, but they can move much quicker. They turn their hips much quicker, and I think that gives them the ability to move much faster. So, if you guys have ever seen a Bigfoot, and you're a witness to this, and I know like I said, a lot of people, as we talked about in point 1 and 2, a lot of people don't want to come forward and talk about this, and I understand. Again, I will include my email down below if you want to either make a comment or you want to email me privately and talk about your experience. I would love to have you on the podcast to talk about things. We do talk to people in incognito mode so that just their voice is on here and they can share their experiences. We'd love to hear from you. Please don't be ashamed that you saw a Bigfoot. Please don't let anybody ridicule you because you saw a Bigfoot. Please don't make it into a negative thing. And please don't be afraid to go back into the forest either. I mean, just because you saw a Bigfoot or had an experience with a Bigfoot, even if it was negative, just remember that the Bigfoot is basically just trying to get you out of its area. It's not trying to possibly do harm. And we'll get into that in a minute here. But I think the most scary thing for people is when they realize that, oh my gosh, this is, not something I recognize. It's not a bear. They realize it looks more like maybe an ape or a man. It has the sudden upright posture, the fluid movement. Sometimes, if you're close enough, you can make eye contact with them. For me, I've had so many encounters. You guys have all heard me talk about my Black Star Canyon encounter. My very first actual physical, seeing the Bigfoot and me going from a skeptic to a believer, and basically my mouth, hitting the floor and not knowing what to do at that point. Just, it wasn't panic. It was just like shock. I think the first thing that happened to me was the shock of seeing such a thing. And then my brain's like, what in the heck is that? Oh my gosh, they're real. And trying to process it and trying to figure out what I'm seeing and why it's there and going, oh crap, holy moly. And it's a combination of, I think, a little bit of panic, a lot of being stunned, a lot of excitement because I'm like, holy crap, they're real. And then realizing that, I need to do something about what I'm seeing. I need to try and document it in some way. It's a lot of emotions that go into that. And then let's say if my encounter had turned aggressive and this thing really wanted to scare us out of there instead of just standing there staring at us, trying to look like a tree, and it hadn't walked behind another tree and grabbed the branches. And I mean, it could have picked that damn tree up. It could have pulled that tree right up out of there and thrown it at us easily. And that thing was so big. It was probably 14 feet tall. It was between 13 and 14 feet tall. I mean, it must have been an older one. It was silvery gray. And if you haven't heard me talk about this, go back and look through my Black Star Canyon stories. I've talked about it so many times. I don't want to keep going into it. But I do want to talk about the emotions and the moment I realized it wasn't something I knew. Let's just put it that way. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a shadow person. It wasn't the boogeyman. It wasn't, something else. It was an actual Bigfoot. It was a giant, hairy, bipedal ape-like creature that was standing there staring at us. And we were 20, 30 feet away. So I don't think there was any fear from either one of us. I was just more shock. I can't tell you what the other witnesses next to me were here feeling. I can tell you I was stunned, and excited and stuff like that. So, I mean, like I said, if this could have turned negative, I mean, this thing could have basically been to us in like 3 or 4 steps, probably. It could have torn us apart. I mean, it could have killed us and just taken the bodies, dragged the bodies off, and nobody would have ever known what happened to us. But there was 30 of us, so maybe that's possibly why no aggressive encounter happened. Maybe it was like, okay, that's too many people to handle at one point in time. If it maybe it was 2 or 3 of us, I mean, it could have probably chased us all down real easy. But they don't seem to do that. They don't seem to be interested in hurting us, at least my encounters. I mean, you may have a different encounter. If you've had a different encounter where you've had an aggressive Bigfoot encounter, let me know. I would love to hear about it. Again, put it in the comments. Let people read about it. Let's talk about it. But anyways, okay, so let's move on. So sounds witnesses never forget. Deep howls and screams, whoops and calls, tree knocks and rock clacks, heavy footsteps. Again, if you followed my research, you've heard howls, you've heard the screams, we've actually documented whoops and calls, tree knocks. I mean, we've documented those multiple times, and then heavy footsteps. I mean, my first encounter, when this thing literally turned and walked away, you hear boom, 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 and it shook the ground like a very light earthquake as it walked away. It stomped away. Basically, it was kind of like throwing a tantrum. You guys are in my territory. Now you've seen me. I'm upset. I want you out of here, essentially. Deep howls and screams. I mean, once you've heard a Bigfoot howl, I mean, it's like nothing else. The one time that we were out at Black Star Canyon, right in front of the entrance where the gate is, and basically that loud scream came out after I'd been doing, I don't know, 2-3 hours worth of call blasting and had nothing. It was quiet as hell up there that night. Nothing. No screams, no howls, no tree knocks, no rock clicking, no nothing. No ghosts. We hadn't had any activity. I mean, we were up there from midnight till about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And as I just turned off the audio recorder and we're walking out, this god awful howl. I mean, it echoed through the whole area, through the mountain range up there, and literally reverberated off my chest. It just stopped us in our tracks. By the time I was able to kind of get out, my motion back, and I grabbed the audio recorder out of my pocket, I recorded the last like 2 seconds of it. There is another howl that I caught where we're doing call blasting back and forth, where I was using my phone to do the call blasting and recording with an audio recorder. There is a section where you hear the coyotes going, and I think they mimic the coyotes. But essentially what happened was, in between the coyotes calls, there's this and I was able to isolate it. I need to put that back up one of these days. But that's probably from, 7 or 8 years ago, maybe a little longer than that. And that was at Black Star Canyon. That wasn't in the canyon we were in. That must have been from a different canyon or different area. It was around the area. It was probably miles away. But we caught it. It was just we didn't even hear it with our own ears. So, whoops and calls. Again, we've documented whoops and calls. When, what's her name, had her experience at Joe's camp, there was definitely some Bigfoots around. I believe the whoops are from the girls, the females. You hear the whoop, 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 whoop. That's basically, I believe that's a female. And on her recorder, her handycam, and the video is just not good. It's terrible video. It's unfortunately the old Sony handycams, not enough IR light, and but you can see eye shine and it's just too dark. It's really, really dark. So all you can hear is basically the audio and her reacting. But she could feel that, she could feel there's something around. When they come around and you've been around them and you know that they're there, it does feel kind of scary. It is very scary. It's scary. It's creepy. It's exciting. And it's all of those things, all wrapped into one. A lot of emotions start going off in your body, and it's kind of like the fight or flee kind of feeling. Do I stay and just try and document to get a little closer, get a little bit better video of this, or try and continue to document this, or should I run? Should I just pull out of here and get out of here? I mean, even for a Bigfoot researcher that's had so many encounters, I still get that. I get a little bit of fear when I start hearing that stuff. It's like, okay, what do I do? And you can't tell where they are most of the time because you don't think you think they're far away, but they're not. They're right down there watching you, and sometimes they're behind a bush right in front of you. They have something in front of you. They have a barrier usually in front of you, so that if you get too close, they're going to let you know. They'll growl or whatever. But so yeah, we've documented the whoops and calls, and that's pretty cool. But those whoops are crazy. I mean, it's even this one was like whoop 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 whoop, and it was just getting more distant every whoop. There was 4 of them, and so as I get the goosebumps as I'm telling this story. So yeah, as they're moving away, and then a male, you could hear like something crunching closer and closer to it was Christy. Christy was the one that was doing that. She was down over in Joe's camp, and I was on the other side, and I could hear them going off too. I couldn't hear the whoops and stuff and the screams, but I could hear them crunching through the forest, and it was creepy. I was up by his old cemetery, and damn, yeah, that was pretty creepy. I'll tell you that much. I actually put my truck between me and the woods, so that if they did come down into my area, they did come out of the forest, and they did decide to do something aggressive towards me, I could easily just climb into my truck. In fact, I ended up climbing into my truck and leaving because I was by myself, and I really did not feel comfortable. They really made me feel uncomfortable that night, and so I took off. But the tree knocks and rock clacks. If you watch one of my old YouTube videos of Black Star Canyon, again, the lighting's not that great because I had an old Sony Handycam, and this is probably from 12, 13 years ago, something like that. I don't remember exactly how long ago. But anyways, you hear them going with the rocks, and you hear me using the drumsticks, clicking back, and they would click and I would click, and they would click and I would click, and it just kept going on until the point where there were some kids that were up about a mile up the road, and you hear this girl scream. I don't know what they saw. They ran right past me, but you hear this god awful howl, and I recorded it. It's documented, but it happened about a mile up the road. Something screamed at them, and it sent them running. And unfortunately, they would not tell me what it was. But the rock clacking is pretty interesting. It honestly sounds, I don't know if it's them just doing with their tongues, which I've heard might possibly be it, or they're clicking their fingers together. Maybe they're clicking fingernails together, or they're actually physically clicking rocks together. I don't know at this point. But also hearing heavy footsteps when you're walking, and then you hear something else walking next to you, and it's like crunch, 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 but you can't see anything, and you're looking over, and you're like, I know there's something there. I know it's not a ghost, and I know there's no bears up here or an animal big enough. It's either a human, which we couldn't see anything, or it's a Bigfoot, and that's that kind of stuff. It's crazy with it that they do that. They basically walk with you, and that's how they try and scare you out of the area. I think a lot of the time it's more playful. I think that they mimic people. So when you take a footstep, they take a footstep, but they want you to know that they've taken a footstep. I think the rock clicking, I think that's like a form of communication. Maybe they're saying like it's like Morse code for them. There's got to be, if we had more rock clicks recorded, either audio and or video, and we could sit down and have somebody that basically breaks down language, listen to that and see if they could decode what that could possibly be. Maybe we could set up some kind of a clicking so we could talk back to them and just, that would be cool. It'd be really cool to open up a line of communication. That's one thing I need to do too, is to look into if apes and stuff like that, they click rocks. I'm pretty sure some species do, actually. Anyways, close encounters versus distant sightings. Distant sightings usually are, confusion or curiosity. Closer encounters create fear, panic, shock, and I've kind of talked about that. Many reports of a sense of being watched, and that is totally true. Once you've had a Bigfoot encounter, not a sighting, but an encounter where you actually kind of a little bit of interaction happened, it's a Bigfoot. They know that it's a Bigfoot, and maybe they snap a branch. Maybe they stand there and peek around a corner, and you make eye contact, or you have some kind of a encounter, basically where you for sure 100% this is a Bigfoot, and the Bigfoot seems to be either curious or angry or whatever, that you're there and you've made some kind of mental contact where you can say, okay, we know each other knows that, each of us knows that the other one knows that they're there. There's no, oh, I think there's something there. It's got, there might be something out there. It's, oh, I've seen you. I know that you're there. Once you've made that connection with them, and a lot of people say telecommunication goes on with Bigfoots. They can read your thoughts. I don't know if they can do that. I think they can read your body language. Just like if I was observing you, when you first have a Bigfoot encounter, that Bigfoot's probably been watching you for a while, and it's either curious about something or doesn't want you in the area, or something's happened to the point where it feels like it needs to do something for you to know it's there. Maybe you're getting close to, where they're bedding down, or maybe you're getting close to where they're hunting, or maybe there's got to be some kind of reason they either show themselves or make themselves known, or they're just curious. The distant sightings, people see a silhouette, and I've had these too. I've had distant sightings where I'm looking out and I'm going, okay, I think there's something there. Oh, I just saw something move, and it's not a ghost, and it's not anything else. There's nobody else in this area, because a lot of the places I go are pretty secluded, and I'm usually there by myself or with a few other people. It's not like they're out running around out in the woods out there. You can usually tell because you have to have some kind of transportation to get there. You have to have a car or something. And there's only one way in and out, the way we came, and we would probably see you if you were, coming in and out. So with these distant sightings, a lot of the time people can kind of see something. They can't see it real clear. They maybe a Bigfoot peeks his head out, or they see it moving in the distance or walking. A lot of people get video of this because the Bigfoot doesn't really know that you're there, or doesn't know that you're seeing it. It's just standing there, or maybe they're basically just kind of, they just poke their head up to see what's going on. They're curious to see what's coming their way, something like that. And basically, I think at this point in time, you're kind of trying to judge what that is. You're trying to figure out if it's what that is. Your brain's kind of rationalizing, that's a bear, or that's a this, or that's a that, or it's just a silhouette from a tree or something. And you can't quite tell exactly what it is until it moves. And then you're like, oh, okay, that didn't look human. It's possibly something else. And then basically you could be more curious, or you're confused about what it is. Close encounters a lot of time create fear, panic, and shock. A lot of people, I mean, I've had a really close encounter that scared the bejesus out of me. Again, at Black Star Canyon, and I've had one at Joe's as well. And so I've talked about this a million times. Doing EVP session up by the mine, where the trees grow over. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go back and listen to my other podcasts about it. I don't want to go into deep dive into it. But anyways, um, I hear what I thought was a mountain lion on the right side of the road. So I wanted to do an EVP session. I was just ghost hunting that night. In the middle of doing EVP session, had a camera set up facing me, and this growling kept happening behind me. And I was like, okay, maybe it's some kind of dog or a mountain lion or something. Just kept going, and then it just stopped abruptly. So I was like, okay, and this went on for like 5 minutes. I was like, what the hell? So I kept my eye on what was going on behind me, made sure I had a fence behind me, made sure I was not down, stooping down or anything. I made sure I was up and looking big. And on the other side where the river was, all of a sudden I hear some branches being rustled. And I'm like, what is that? So I looked over there, walked over to the fence on the other side, and I, of course, kept my eye behind me too, looking at what was going on over there. I'm like, what the heck? And all of a sudden this tree starts going back and forth, right? So I documented that. Unfortunately, again, lighting was terrible, and I've got a solution for that. You guys watching the new show I'm doing, that won't be a problem anymore. I've got enough light, hopefully, to light up all of Texas pretty much. But anyways, so yeah, the that happened. The Bigfoot basically was shaking a tree back and forth, runs up the creek. I watched it run up the creek. I could see it. I knew exactly what it was. I'm like, okay. And this is the ones I call the twins. There's two that looked exactly the same. Big, burly, probably about 7 feet tall, and probably about almost 6 feet wide. I mean, these things were massive, big, burly, big. I call them the bouncers. Anyways, so I start walking back down after that encounter. I was like, okay. I knew I was by myself. I'm like, that was really cool. That just, icing on the cake, right? Start walking back down. To the left of me was a berm where the hill kind of slopes down, and the trail's kind of carved into it. It's about 2 feet high, 3 feet high, and crouched down on the left side of the road. And I was only like 1 or 2 feet away from that side of the road, where this berm was. Crouched down is something. It looked like a giant ape on steroids, right? Big, huge, hairy thing. I caught it out of the corner of my eye, turned my head in just enough to see what it was, and turned back. I'm like, oh my God, it's a big. Man, I could have literally reached out and grabbed that thing, or it could have literally reached out and grabbed me. It was just crouched down, basically sitting down with its knuckles on the ground. And I can still see it clearly today. I mean, I can see exactly what it was. It had dark brown, blackish fur. Had monkey face, had the whole, cone-shaped head, and the eyes are just kind of glowing red, probably from the reflection of the moon or whatever. It was pretty bright that night. And that area is very secluded up in the mountains. No external lighting except for the moon. If there's no moon, it's pretty damn dark up there. Anyways, you can still see, but it's very difficult to see more than about 10 feet ahead of you most of the time. Your eyes get used to the dark, and you can see pretty well. Anyways, so this thing literally was sitting there, didn't make a noise, didn't do anything, just sat there. And then I looked at it, and I went, oh crap. And I just about had a heart attack. My heart was going so fast. I just turned off the audio recorder, just turned off the handy cam. And probably a good thing, because if I had turned the handy cam to look at that thing, I don't know what would have happened. If I had turned my shoulders to square to it, I may not be here today. I don't know what it would have done to me, but it might have been bad, right? So I took about 6 or 7 steps thinking, okay, it's I didn't know what I was thinking. I was like, holy crap. I was so scared on my mind. I didn't know what to do. I'm like, I'm just going to take 6 or 7 steps. I'm just going to keep. And I finally told myself, no, you got to stop. You got to turn around. I turned the video camera on real quick, and I kept everything kind of in towards my chest so I couldn't see what I was doing. My back was to it. Turned around with the video recorder recording. It was gone. No noise. It was gone. And so essentially, I'm like, damn it. And I turned back around. Of course, there's a shadow person that scared the living bejesus out of me. And the ghost and I at Black Star Canyon, we developed a relationship, and they would help me find Bigfoot, and I would talk to them all the time like they're, normal people and whatever else. Anyways, that's a story for another time. So I'm about a mile from my car. I'm where the scream happened when those kids came running, right? So I'm start walking down, and as I'm walking down, it just sounds like there's a bulldozer going through the forest above me, almost all the way back. Crunch, crash, snap, boom. And it just sounds like something large is just, going through the forest and making all this noise. And scared the living bejesus out of me. It took me 3 months to go back up there, and I finally got up the courage. I'm like, I got to go back up there. But I'll tell you what, after that encounter, I had a lot of close encounters, but they never showed themselves again. I had probably 20 sightings up there, daytime, nighttime, where they just would walk out of the forest right in front of me. They didn't really care. But after that, and you guys can go back and listen to what basically I think triggered all that with the trap cam and stuff. But anyways, yeah, so it took me a long time to go back up there. And after that, I was very aware of their presence. And to this day, I still feel like I'm very aware of their presence when I go into the forest. So I'm glad it's not just me that reports that. Anyways, intelligence and intentional behavior. Excuse me, I can't seem to say that word. So blocking paths or roads, throwing rocks near people, shadowing without being seen, as I just talked about, avoiding cameras, mimicking sounds. So let's start with the blocking path or roads. At Joe's camp, I always thought they were just, they were just comedians, because Joe had clear paths that he carved out and in between trees and stuff like that, because his area on both sides of his property and the back were very overgrown and hard to walk through. It was very, very thick with trees and shrubs and bushes and stuff like that. He just left it wild, which is cool. But you start walking up these paths, especially, after the first 2 years that I was up there, we got to investigate Joe's property, do Bigfoot expeditions up there for almost 4 years until his passing, unfortunately. But anyway, so you'd walk up these trails on the side of his property towards the back. He had 55 acres, so it wasn't a small property. And you're walking up, and then the road would be on there's a old logging road to the left, and then more forest on the left, and then more of his family's property on the left as well, and then more forest, right? Until you got to the cemetery kind of up on the left side of his property. And then there was a path through there, and then there was the telephone poles, which they kept clear. And then basically there was another trail that led up into the forest, and I was told by Joe, nobody in the area goes in that area, and nobody's has gone up there in 20 years. Unfortunately, I never got to go up there because he told me we're not allowed to, so we were never given permission to go up there. Okay, so back to blocking paths or roads. So essentially, when I would walk through that area after the first 2 years, and other people, would notice it too, they were like comedians. You'd walk through an area, you'd walk about 10, 15 feet, and you wouldn't hear anything, right? And the 2 trees that you just walked through would have something like a branch pulled through, blocking that. And then the next, you'd walk through a couple, where 2 bushes were, and there'd be like a stick put through. And, you'd walk another, 20 feet, and that area between the 2 bushes you just walk through, there'd be a boulder sitting there. So you had to find another way around. And they would just do that all the time to us. And it was pretty fun for them to do that. So yeah, I mean, it was just crazy, the things that they would do. And we documented a lot of this. I mean, if you go back and watch Joe's Camp, there's actually two videos on it. There's two documentaries on Joe's Camp. The one, basically, the first one we did was okay. The second one actually got better. We had better camera gear and better equipment and stuff. I really wish that we could get back up there again, because the technology we have now, the new equipment we have now, it would be a game changer. I mean, it would be a game changer to get back up there. But throwing rocks near people, Black Star Canyon, we had that. I talked about this other day where we were walking up by the river on the left side, back up to that spot where I had that encounter where I told you I got chased out. On one side of the river, it was pretty flat, and there's some trees and stuff like that, and basically rocks were flying over. We couldn't see what was throwing them. And then above us, there was about a cliff wall that was probably 20 feet plus tall. And again, very overgrown, very brush, a lot of trees up there. And you just hear, and all this, like, basically going on back and forth every time a rock was thrown, and basically over our heads, you hear them start going off above us. And that went on for like 10-15 minutes, and then we finally just walked past that area and they stopped. So shadowy figures being seen, or being shadowed, like I talked about on my way back. Avoiding cameras. I don't think they always avoid the cameras. At Joe's Camp, we have a couple strange photos, and I never present them as evidence because I can't tell you who or what they are. I don't know if they're just some person, but it doesn't look like it. Must be a giant bodybuilder. We've gotten a couple of trail cam pictures, not video, just pictures of something standing in front of the camera. And basically what I've found is that other Bigfoots had moved through. Something walked right in front of the camera to block the camera, and then other Bigfoots basically moved through. I don't think it realized it was standing too far away that I could actually see the outline of its head and the neck and the shoulders and part of the back. And this camera was up about 8 feet. So, imagine like the middle of the back is where the camera was. So that's probably not a person if it's above 8 feet and then something walking by, but it's blocking most of the camera, so you can't see what's going by. And then there's another video of one where basically or another set of pictures where basically it's only a 5 or 6 second video, but basically there's a shadow being cast maybe by another trail cam at a different angle. So imagine one straight and one about 4 or 5 trees behind it, maybe 10 feet behind it, kind of at a different angle, and it walked in between the two maybe, and was sitting there watching a deer, and you can just see the shadow of it on the ground. I don't think, like I said, I don't think they avoid cameras all that much. If they're hungry or if they're hunting or whatever, I don't think they really give a crap, to be honest with you. Mimicking sounds. So I told you about the witness that basically said he heard his wife's voice call his name, and then seen the Bigfoot out in the forest, and then him running back and his wife not being there, and him running back to the house. Many times when I've been out in the forest, I've heard them mimic coyotes, mimic bird sounds and other noises, so that they basically, I think that's their way of communicating. Kind of like if a special ops group is out in the wilderness and they whistle, or they make a click or whatever. I think that's just basically their way of kind of checking in. I don't necessarily think that's so much trying to communicate with us. I think that's them communicating with other family members in their group. Okay, so let's move on because I'm just blabbing on. Physical evidence found at the encounter. So a lot of times, if we're lucky, we find footprints. We find broken or twisted trees, flattened grass on nests, hair samples, and we've definitely found that. Up at Black Star Canyon, I found that footprint that one day it had been raining quite a bit, and the earth gave way, and I think there was a like a hole, like a snake hole or a bunny hole or something, and this thing had literally put its foot into the ground, unfortunately, and stepped on into it and left that U shape, and then you could kind of see where the foot kind of grabbed the top of where uh, the hole used to be. It caved the hole in essentially, but stepped in that hole and then pushed down with its toes and pushed off. And I did find a piece of hair sample from that. Now, is it a Bigfoot? I don't know. I've never been able to get that tested. One of these days, we'll definitely do that. But broken or twisted trees, I mean, look at Joe's Camp's videos. I mean, you guys want to see that? I mean, they're everywhere up there. Black Star Canyon, not so much. Although I do think I found an old blind that had been kind of blended into a bush where I could basically have been laying there and watching people walk by and nobody would have known. I think they were, if those things were there, they were up higher, up in the mountainous area, away from where people were walking. I think they probably had that kind of stuff up there where you couldn't see them. The flattened grass or nests. We did find those at Joe's camp where we walked into them. I think that was on one of the very first nights I was there. Or those bowls, almost like looked like giant bathtubs, where somebody dug out the sand about a foot and a half, 2 feet deep, and they made in between the bamboo, and they made all these holes, but they were like kind of oval shaped. And I mean, if you wanted to sleep down there, you could easily do it. It would have been really soft and easy. I mean, I'm 6'2", and most of these holes were double my length. So, I mean, I would have been like in the middle of it. But yeah, I mean, it'd be easy to conceal yourself because you wouldn't be above ground and you could just, gotten down in that hole and nobody would have seen you. Um, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, imagine, somebody coming across a Bigfoot sleeping or something. People find footprints all the time. They find broken or twisted trees. They find flattened grass or nests. If you've watched some of the shows, they've found some nests recently. Hair samples. I mean, we found a few hair samples. They seem to be harder to find than you would think. I mean, I searched every fence on Joe's property that I could find with barbed wire. I couldn't find any hair samples. And you'd think if they're stepping over that, they would catch a little bit of hair on there. But who knows? Anyways. So how encounters change witnesses. So loss of interest in camping or hunting, obsession with answers, nightmares or anxiety, deep respect for the wilderness. Some become investigators themselves. I'm guilty of that. So the loss of interest in camping or hunting did happen to me, but I wasn't, hunting or camping up at Black Star Canyon again. It took me 3 months after that sighting, the last sighting I ever had with one up there, a very close encounter, to actually go back. And every time after that, I'm not gonna lie, I was scared when I went up there. I was afraid of them at that point. And unfortunately, my relationship with them, and I felt like I had a positive relationship, turned negative because I crossed a boundary with them. Obsession with answers. Talking as a witness, yes, I am obsessed with Bigfoot, finding information on Bigfoot. I have more questions than I have answers, and the more I dig, the more questions I have. And I'm not going to get into all that now. Nightmares and anxiety. I did not have nightmares, but I know a lot of people that do end up having encounters with them do have emotional issues. Maybe they never want to go back into the forest again. I've talked to a lot of hunters that have had experiences that will never go back into the forest again. And it's a shame because we should be able to live with these things. Anxiety, yes, I did have anxiety. Like I said, it took me 3 months to go back up there because I was afraid of what I had seen. And it took me a long time to wrap my head around what just happened. And it took me a long time to be able to get the courage to go back up there. And I'm like, no, I can't not do this. I need to get back up there and keep going. And it turned out well for me. I mean, now I'm still a little bit afraid every time I go out, but I'm not as afraid as I was. I have a deep respect for not only the wilderness, but the Bigfoots. Uh, like I always say, imagine me walk into your living room and trying to communicate with you or document you what you're doing. You'd be like, what the hell? You'd be all up in arms too, probably. So, it says some become investigators themselves. Yes, that's very true. I became an investigator of Bigfoot. I was only a ghost hunter at that point. Now I'm more interested in Bigfoot and Dogman, and I've always been into Loch Ness Monster and lake monsters and stuff. But it really opened me up to other things. I don't just research. I'm not just a ghost hunter. I'm a paranormal investigator now. I research all things paranormal. So, in paranormal activity. Why witness testimony may be the strongest evidence? When you have thousands of people across decades, and not even maybe decades, maybe a century or two, that have all reported very similar encounters with different things, not just in the United States, but across the world, that says something. That's very powerful. And if you took all these people and you basically put them up on a screen and you were able to witness, let's just say it's 100 people, and you started to play their encounter, and you had one encounter after another, and you listened to all these people talk, you'd find that their encounters, most of them would be very similar. What happened? What did they see? What kind of interaction did they have? What were they feeling? Um, Stuff like that. I mean, very similar behavior and descriptions with most of the Bigfoots encounters I have. Most of the time it's brief. Most of the time it's the Bigfoot. They see the Bigfoot sees them, and the Bigfoot walks away. Or if they're camping, I got rocks thrown at me. We got screamed at. We basically picked up our crap and ran. Or we just stayed in our tent. They came in, and I've had this happen. I actually got touched, which scared the living bejesus out of me too at Joe's camp. Something literally pushed the side of the tent in and touched my side, which I was like, "Holy crap!" And yeah, I got out to go to the restrooms later on that night, and you hear it wasn't a whoop. It was kind of like it was a deeper. It's like a ooh, ooh, ooh. It was strange, and unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough to bring my camera or at least the audio recorder out with me when I went to the restrooms. It was so damn cold that night. It was like 20. It was like 18 degrees, and I was freezing my yin yang off. So yeah, I mean, I should have been smarter. But lessons learned. That's how you learn. Anyways, basically, a lot of this stuff, these witnesses have never talked to each other. A lot of these people that are having these encounters have never looked up anything Bigfoot wise. They didn't even know Bigfoot existed. And I mean, it just rocks their world. Holy crap. I've been out here hunting for 20 plus years, and I've never seen anything. And all of a sudden one day this Bigfoot comes walking out of the woods, grabs my deer and walks back into the woods. And I didn't know what to do with that. I was out camping. I heard wood knocks and some screams and howls, and now I'm afraid to go back into the woods. Or I was out camping and I had rocks thrown at my tent, and something came in and pushed down on my tent. And when I kind of turned the flashlight on, it left. Or something stole some stuff out of my cooler, or whatever it is. Maybe I was out hiking and I saw something daytime, nighttime, and stuff like that. So, but most of these people, especially the police officers and the truck drivers and all these people that are reporting these things or aren't reporting these things, they're usually not believers. They're skeptical. They don't even know that these things exist, and all of a sudden this thing walks into their world, and it's like it just opens their eyes, and they're like, "Holy crap!" Think about think about it this way: if you're watching or listening or both, you're probably either interested in the subject, you're probably a believer, a non-believer, and you're just trying to look for answers, or you've had an experience and you're looking for more information from somebody else that possibly has had an experience, or maybe you want more information about what you saw. Maybe you're trying to figure out for yourself what you experienced. Basically these stories that come in through the years and take it all the way back to the Indians. I mean, the Indians, the Native Americans, have had encounters with these things for, hundreds of years. And I'm sure there's stories that we don't even know about. They possibly even live with the Bigfoots. One question I have for you guys. If Bigfoot isn't real, why do so many people tell the same story? Ask yourself that. All right, guys, so if you've had an encounter, please email me or please comment down below. We'd love to hear about it. And we will catch you guys on the next one.